Frank, can I just start the evening by offering that mixed use commercial properties just suck?
I was just going to ask you, Chris. Hopefully, you're finding remedies for those issues that you
I'm
talked
working it
about.
through, but it's just like after getting really comfortable in the residential multi-unit side, I picked up a couple mixed use because I wanted the residential and the commercial was kind of I had to take it.
Hmm.
And it's just the biggest pain in my rear. I only have 2 out of 30, but it's just like I lose all my sleep due to those. The residential stuff's easy, right? Um, by
Yeah.
comparison.
How hard is it to change those over to residential?
Um, It's a little harder than I thought because the townships are getting very ornery now around the sprinkler requirement. So if I convert and it's more than 3 units, I got to do sprinklers. And, of course, the water mains on the other side, not in the middle of this, not in my side of the street, it's the other side of the street. It's 30 grand just to tear up the asphalt and the highway. And it's ugly,
Oh, wow.
but we're working it through. Creativity and flexibility is key. That's the only thing I'd offer.
Well, that's good. That's great to hear.
I also think, Frank, unless you buy something that's like a standard cookie cutter, like Class A or Class B office space, the rent boxes on these are way harder, right? Because you have a lot of quirky commercial units, right? Like one of my units used to be a catering hall, the other one used to be a hairdresser, med spa, and benchmarking those is really hard.
Yeah, it seems like it could be if you had to, well, for example, you said the one that had was a commercial kitchen versus one that had the hair salon, the
Yeah.
fixtures and things. If you were trying to lease the space and we're getting a different type of tenant, would they handle the like changing the fixtures and things, or do you typically do that?
They could. I mean, it's all trade, right? And I can do. I think they call that what's the term? TI, tenant improvement, or
Yeah,
TI dollars, right? And so, like, if I pay for it, I can raise my rent, or I can let them pay for it, and then I got to compensate for my rent, so or the lease. So,
yeah. I think we all have issues. I was talking to somebody earlier about actually it was Jared. We were talking earlier because he does the pad split version of Rent by the Room there in Arizona,
mm,
and uh, he was thinking that he might like to transition a little bit to something that didn't require as much hands-on. He's putting a lot of time in there because
yeah,
he had a tenant that was causing issues and was getting calls, several times a day.
yeah,
Um, but I was telling him even the stuff that we're doing, that long-term buy and hold singles and small multifamily have their issues as well. We are going through stuff on our triplex in Missouri. We just did a nice big rehab on two of the units and took a while to get them rented out. And but we got them rented out over the last couple of weeks, so we were really excited about that. And then
cool.
one of the tenants moved in and had toilet issues of all things. So when they sent the plumber there to take care of the toilet issue, apparently when they were snaking the line, it must have cracked it or something. So then sewer water
Oh,
was dropping down into unit A on the bottom.
oh God, so sorry,
So
Frank.
yeah, it's okay. I appreciate it, but that kind of stuff. And so not just the repairs and looking for the leak and all that stuff and getting
Yeah.
someone in there to remedy the bad water that got into the other unit. And but now we're putting those tenants up in a motel for a few
Oh
nights.
God,
So it's adding up quick.
yeah.
So
Oh God, I'm
yeah.
so sorry. Yeah, it's funny. In the last year, I've had more toilet, septic, sewer issues than I have in the previous in many, many years. And my dad actually had two boarding houses, so I grew up kind of helping him with those. So I'd love to do boarding houses, but you're right, it's so much work. But I had a tenant flushing hypodermic needles because he was injecting steroids because he's a muscle guy, and wrapped in flushable wipes, non-flushable wipes. And he was blocking up the line. And because he was on the top floor, when he would flush, the water would come down and pick up speed and momentum, and then it would hit the bend, and then it would hit the blockage right before the downstairs tenant's toilet. And
Uh-huh.
the pressure backwash would look for the pressure buildup would look for the easiest way out, which was the downstairs tenant toilet, and it would literally explode like a fountain.
Oh
And it
my,
took me a week to figure out what the hell was going on. We had to basically cut out all the basement plumbing, and then I'm looking at one of the pipes. I'm like, wait, what's that? And I'm like, that's a hypodermic needle. I actually have a picture. I'm like, holy crap, what is going on?
wow.
Yeah, valuable life lessons.
Yeah, definitely. And I I have mixed feelings about. I was thinking of some topics for a video because here we are trying to help people get into this game, but lately all the stories are horror stories, and I don't want
Yeah,
to we definitely want to tell the truth, but that can be a little discouraging sometimes, I think.
it can be. Definitely can be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's great to see you all here tonight. Um, no new faces, but I think Sean, you had some information you wanted to go over. Are you ready to do that now, or you want to wait a little while?
Uh, yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm under contract.
that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, I found a duplex kind of at the edge of my buy box. I like to be, yeah, I self-manage, so I like to be an hour from my properties. But I found one I liked, and had an inspection report on it. And I thought I might ask, the group, maybe particularly um, folks like with Frank's skills, about a few issues in the inspection report.
Yeah, definitely. Is that something you want to share or just talk about? Do you want to share
Yeah, sure.
screen?
I can share it. I'll throw a few questions out.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Okay, that should give you access.
All right, we'll share. You guys let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, got it.
Okay, so this is the inspection. Um, my my primary concern with this place is that um it's kind of going downhill, right? So can see here in just a minute. The first thing the inspector pointed out was, hey, there's some limbs hanging over that need to be trimmed. There's some bushes next to the house. You know, these, while this is not cheap, we know exactly how to fix this. This is easy, right?
Hmm.
Some driveway issues. These aren't the worst driveway issues. There's some worse than that. But so this was something that I wanted to ask about is, so if you look right here, you can see there's a French drain going in the front. This is, if you can see my cursor, kind of looking down the the driveway toward the property. I'll go past this. Yeah, right here's what he pointed out. This being sufficient to carry any water away, and the slope of the the yard, like going away from the house, he said, wasn't enough. So you've got, some slope coming this way, and this is kind of flat. Um, you can see it right here. This this damage right here is kind of right at the corner of the house. I did have somebody look at that. I said, I thought vinyl was waterproof. What's going on? And he said, actually, I think you've got, somebody that got overzealous with a weed eater that caused that damage. It wasn't caused by water. So, um, anyway, those are some concerns there with that. Maybe I'll pause there and just see what your contractor eye tells you.
Yeah, no, when they talk about resloping the earth a little bit away from the house, it depends a little bit on how high it is now, right? Because if it's already up near the siding, you don't really have the opportunity to build that side up. It would look more like, do you have room to grade it down towards the French drain?
Right. There wouldn't be a lot, right? I did ask somebody, a contractor that's got a Bobcat service, if they could do some grading and stuff like that. The cost would be, it's $100 an hour with 5 hours minimum. But I could probably also get some work around the driveway done as part of that also. So that's a possibility.
Was that was that the only part that didn't slope away from the house, or is it all the way around?
That's really the main part, is right there in the front. And
Yeah,
like I say, you can tell they had an issue. So when I did the inspection, the tenants were there, and I asked them, and they said, if there's rain, normally that French drain handles it, but if it's like a downpour, you can get some pooling of water there in the front.
Where in the front, Sean, is that?
So let me go back up to this other picture. Well, this might be the best one here, even though I don't know if that's kind of small, but kind of, if you can see my cursor, kind of this part of the house right here is from the driveway down to the house. There's like a little bit of slope.
Right. So from the front, yeah, you could see there's the steps right there, right?
Is that a crushed stone or an asphalt driveway?
I think at one time it probably used to be a pretty good asphalt driveway, but now it's see if I can get a good look at that. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, it's in kind of rough shape. That's what I was going to do, is have him fill in with gravel while he had the Bobcat there, because there were a few spots in the driveway that were pretty rough, but basically, like especially first when you pull in, there's a couple of holes that could really get filled in and smoothed out, which is kind of something I'd want to do anyway, because I could just imagine if you were a tenant living there, having to go through a pothole going in and out every time. They probably like it if the new guy made it pleasant to pull into the property.
Yeah, I get nervous with properties that are lower than the grade of the road, just in general. Now, of course, that's sort of, different cases for each property. So
yeah, those were my thoughts exactly. I just don't know how serious it is. If once again, ask the tenants if they ever had any problem with flooding, and they said, if the water would pool up a little in the front yard if it was ever a really hard rain. So, and I wasn't sure if what looked like the damage in front was
That looks like weed whacker. I mean, the stuff you showed earlier.
Yeah, I asked another handyman about it, and like this stuff right here, and yeah, that's what he said. Is somebody might have got carried away with the weed whacker, because vinyl doesn't.
And that's in Georgia?
It is in Georgia.
I was just curious in the rain, like if you don't have a good way to just drain the water away from the house, and I've had mixed results with these, like you run an underground line and you have a pop-up valve. But I mean, what problem are you trying to solve, right? The siding looks like it's a weed whacker guy, unless you see something under there that's different. And then you don't have any water intrusion in the house. You have a little bit of pooling out front. do you just put not a French drain, but like I for one house I run a French drain to like a it's like an underground pit that collects the water. So instead of pooling
Mhm.
the surface, it pulls under there and diffuses, and then you're done with it. I almost it's like I mean, there's a little bit of water collection up front, but it's not like you have something that seems to be imminently damaging the house. It seems like it's just a matter of how do you manage the water out front, whether you French drain it farther away from the house down the driveway or under the
Right.
driveway to a pop-up valve, or I forget what you call it, like an underground like pit, or it's basically an underground
Yeah.
black poly barrel with a bunch of holes and then some
Mhm.
gravel and the water pools in there and then it diffuses into the ground. But that could be a relatively easier fix. Just a thought. So
Yeah, it's a great point. I did some research on YouTube and saw where some people had some luck just digging a hole straight down, and it's like if you get down kind of below the hard dirt, if you get down deep enough and you put like a landscaping fabric in there and fill it up with rocks and then put grass on top, it kind of
Infiltrates.
yeah, it drains, you know, wet areas pretty well. So
We've called it a dry well up in our area, where you
mhm.
basically you can buy them, or you can do a poor man dry well, where it's basically a 55-gallon drum, and you just put
yeah,
Mhm.
bingo. That's what I was trying to.
yeah, and you can just create your own, dig it and put it in there, fill it with gravel, punch a bunch of holes in it, and put gravel around the outside of it, kind of thing, and
Right.
get a lid for it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know that it's that serious of a problem. But like I say, I'm new to it. Don't really know the property, and I you know would be a little bit concerned if water did get up to the point where it came in the house. So that and another thing that that was in the report that you know, I'll just ask about in case anyone knows about it. If you notice, this is on a slab, right? And the water pipes are all in the attic. And what the inspector pointed out to me is that the pipes aren't insulated. And I asked one of the tenants about it, and because it has a pretty new roof on it, I asked her about, you know, what looked like some water on the ceiling. And she said, "Oh yeah, we had a water pipe bust up there on Christmas Eve." And that's what is in the inspection reports. He recommended insulating the pipes, and I was going to see if I could maybe get a handyman to go do that. Once again, it's not critical. I've got from now until the winter to get something like that done, but I don't want to get a call on Christmas Eve that the
Yeah.
pipe burst next year.
I had a question for the broader group because like we've had some situations like that and we insulated first and that generally worked, but then I got nervous, so I actually heat taped, right? The heat tape turns on if it gets too cold. But
Mhm.
somebody told me that what they recommended was just because it's super easy to do, just replace it with a PEX, right? Because if PEX freezes, it doesn't burst. So I've heard, not a plumber, right? But you know, is that the easiest solution just to replace it with PEX and then don't worry about it, right? I mean, maybe you still insulate it, but still.
That's a good.
I would in our area. I mean, part of the problem is, I think, with PEX, if you have a fitting, if it happens to have a rigid fitting somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if PEX
Try
is
to put
more
that in the heated
forgiving,
space or insulate
it's
that maybe.
it's more forgiving than probably copper or like PVC or something like that. But I wouldn't. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm in Eastern Washington, where it gets negatives for a week, so we don't. You know,
Yeah, this is what he's talking about.
yeah. If you're in an area where it's seasonally, like, oh, we might get to freezing, like Seattle or something, where it's not quite as cold, you might get away with something like that. But yeah, it just depends on your region, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great feedback. Great ideas. And I'll think about that. I'd heard about that before, but I completely forgot about PEX. So
You're gonna have you're gonna have some transition fittings. I think, like Josh might have mentioned, the PEX itself can expand up to I think it's 5 or 6 times its diameter and not
Okay.
burst. But wherever that transitions from copper or whatever the other pipe is, that would need to be, probably need to want to insulate it there. And then as
Mhm.
far as insulating the PEX, when we put in new stuff, they'll have us insulate the hot side to save a little bit of energy there.
Hey,
And
Frank, what's your experience? Do you work with PEX?
I work with PEX A, which is the one, not the ones with the crimp rings, but the ones with the expansion rings.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say my experience with PEX was not good, but it was back in 2015 or something. So it's probably the first version of it.
Yeah, well, they still sell the B at Home Depot and places like that. That's their red and blue PEX, and then they sell the crimp rings, and they sell the tool there too to crimp it. But the PEX A, sometimes it's called Wurzbo PEX, and they have the PEX rings that fit over the pipe and they expand, and then you slip it onto the joint fitting. That's what we use. I've never really liked the crimp style.
Yeah, we had a bathroom installed down in a basement bedroom we built, and they did all the plumbing work with PEX and everything and had everything done in the bathroom, and then it leaked. And it was a nightmare to get to fix, and it just sucked. So that's my only involvement with PEX. But it's
Yeah.
good to hear there's a newer version. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, there was an issue years ago, probably maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where like I said, they come color coded, right? Red or blue for hot or cold. And apparently when they were doing the red, the way they infused the color did something to the plastic. And a friend of mine had his whole house was done with, you know, what do you call it? Radiant heating and all that. So they had to come in and replace all of his PEX. So
Yeah.
that's the explanation they gave him, was that when they dyed the plastic, it did something to the molecular structure of that pipe. The cold never had a problem. It was just hot.
I've had it actually, not split in this is in my own house, a kitchen on an outside wall. And even if you had it in the attic and it didn't burst, but you could get a call Christmas Eve saying we have no water, and because maybe it doesn't burst, but if it's frozen,
Right.
well, no water's flowing through there, and if that
Good
happens
point.
for a few days, then maybe it's not going to break, it's going to thaw and be fine, but they still got to get water to whatever
Yeah.
fixture that's going to also.
Yeah, I kind of liked the heat tape idea somebody mentioned earlier. I'd actually researched that. It doesn't sound that expensive. And yeah, from what I was looking, you can get it where it'll plug in and you just run it down the pipe and put the insulation over it. And it's
Mhm.
got a thermostat. It doesn't do anything until it hits 37 degrees. And when it hits 37 degrees, it'll warm the
Yeah.
pipe up enough just to keep it from freezing. So it's not like you're trying to,
We've
Yeah.
done that in a couple of properties in the attic and in the
Yeah.
uninsulated spaces.
because that sounds like a solution I might want to do in another property that's got a crawl space.
I think if you were in the Northeast, I'd say it's not enough, but I think if you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, it's probably a good solution.
Yeah. Right. Very, very good. And just about everything else in here, it's like I kind of have an idea about what I would do with it, and if it's something that could wait or something I'd want to take care of, right away if the purchase did go through. Have you ever heard of the inspector noticed noted that the dishwashers weren't secure? I guess they just stuck them in there. There's probably a screw or something that keeps them.
On the top or the side that attaches it to the cabinet or the countertop.
Okay. That's probably just
How
a
are the
screw, right?
economics in the unit? I mean, what's the other side of this equation?
The economics are okay for this area. It's a duplex, so there's, two rent checks supporting it. That's right. The inspector noted like normally there's a loop in this line, like from the dishwasher going into the drain, and that this was a straight line. Do you think that's something that's urgent to address, or can be done, maybe next time I have to have a plumber go out?
I would probably do it sooner rather than later because most of the installation directions, like Chris was talking about with us about dishwashers a couple of weeks ago, but that high loop helps the dishwasher drain properly.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, then water might stay in the bottom of the dishwasher and starts to smell kind of funky after a little while.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Frank, would you agree? It's not it's going to break and leak water issue. It's going to stink and be annoying issue. It's not something to lose sleep over. It's something to tenant convenience address when you get a chance. Is that fair, Frank?
Yeah, I would say that's totally fair. And the other thing too is when we were talking about dishwashers last time, there is an air gap. Typically, that little thing that sits on top of the countertop by the faucet, like usually a little chrome cap about 2 inches tall. So typically your dishwasher in the old days, it would go up, the dishwasher discharge line goes up to that fitting. It's like a Y, and then it comes back down to the garbage disposal on the other side. And that just lets air in that line. A lot of times now, the dishwashing companies are okay with not having the air gap and just doing the high loop. But inspectors in our area don't like that, and they'll make us put the air gap in.
Hey Frank, any sense it's funny here in the Northeast, I've never seen that. Now, Northeast being mid-Atlantic, right? And it's not come up in code inspections or anything like that. Any sense, is that like an old thing that's phasing out or a new thing that's coming in? Any sense on that?
I don't think it's an old thing. I think it's continuing because when the inspector, let's see, that was a job that we just finished probably 2 years ago. And I didn't put the air gap in because it had never been an issue. But in this jurisdiction, so it was a city versus a county jurisdiction. Maybe that made a difference. But again, in this jurisdiction, they almost made us change out all the exterior lights to have motion lights. And that was going to be quite a cost because the homeowner had just purchased all her new light fixtures and she spent probably
For
$1,000.
inspection? They wanted motion lights, really?
Yeah, and motion lights.
Whoa.
And the ones that have the daylight sensors on them so they wouldn't come on during the day. Yeah. And it was going to be pretty big expense, but he went back to the office. I guess they talked about it and they were okay with us installing what she had bought. So maybe that's just a California thing, but
and your big brother. Wow.
Yeah. They're watching us.
Frank, with these kind of holes right here, like around the pipe where they've cut into sheetrock, and would you fill that in with like Great Stuff or caulk, or what would you do with that?
Yeah, I think Great Stuff is a good option. And then a lot of times they'll have the escutcheons or the chrome rings that fit over the pipe after you put that Great Stuff in, but you need to wait a little while for the Great Stuff to dry, and then if you can trim it flush with the wall, that way you can get that ring over the pipe and slide it back. That just looks nice, but I think Great Stuff popping out everywhere isn't going to be that attractive.
Yeah, good point.
They have a couple different kinds. So the Great Stuff for doors and windows doesn't expand as much as the regular what's it called? I think it's called Big Gap Expansion Foam. That one,
the
really
explosion foam.
Yeah, that one. It really expands a lot. And then they have the fire rated one, which is the orange one, and that's usually used on penetrations where wiring goes up through into the attic. And
they make a nice pest one too, Frank, that's got something in it to discourage animals from nibbling at it.
Yeah, we used that one last time, and I had thought originally that was to help with mice, but it's only for insects. So I was a little bit bummed about that.
And Frank, one other question, if you would, is the inspector noted that between the units in the attic, there's like someone had cut a hole in the sheetrock, or he called it a firewall
Uh-huh.
between the two. You know, I guess that's so if one person's side catches on fire, doesn't go over. Do you think that's you know, obviously if something to stop fire, is that like a safety concern? Something you would address right away?
Yeah, I would address that right away. John Morris,
Yeah, I was gonna say
Is-
John's not on today.
yeah, he was talking about that too. He's got to build a firewall between his two units.
Hmm.
And so that's gonna, well, it probably is already 5/8 sheetrock. It
Mhm.
shouldn't be 1/2 inch because the burn time is a lot less. But I would patch that up pretty quick.
Hey,
Yeah,
Frank, can I offer another thought on that?
Oh, of course.
We have a
Yeah.
shore place. It's a duplex, and it's not just a fire safety issue. It's actually kind of a security issue because now you got one person in unit one can climb up in the attic, go through that hole, then come back down in unit
Great.
two. And if
Yeah.
now they'll probably never know, but if they go up there
Probably.
and figure that out, that's a whole separate set of problems you got.
Right. That's a really good point. I didn't think of that.
It's free access between the units, which is not ideal from a liability perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
I had that
Yeah,
in a storage unit once.
Yeah, probably the guy that got up there on Christmas Eve to fix the pipe had to chase it down and cut the hole
Yeah.
in between the two to get.
But I will say this, like on the flip side, like the reason the hole was there in the first place was that when the contractor built our duplex, for reasons which are beyond me, the roof, the ridge vent, I think that's what you call it, Frank, the ridge vent was
Uh-huh.
only in the other unit. So my unit attic was collecting all the heat and there was nowhere for it to escape to. So the contractor, instead of doing the right thing and extending the ridge vent, he just cut a hole in my firewall in the attic so that the hot air would go over and go out the ridge vent, which was a double wrong decision. But anyway, so we were forced to add the ridge vent to our side and then close that up from a security perspective. So
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point as well. It
So
seemed
wait a
like,
second, when you have that firewall and it doesn't allow for ventilation, then how did you resolve that? You had two ridge vents?
I think that's what he said. They put,
Okay.
maybe it was it a ridge vent, Chris, or was it?
yeah,
just
it's actually a four. It looks like townhomes, like it's like four townhomes, and we're on the outer edge,
Oh,
and the
okay.
middle two have the ridge vent, and we don't. So
Oh,
when they put up that firewall, we didn't have any attic ventilation. So they cut a hole rather than extending the ridge vent into our attic, and so we just paid to have the ridge vents put on our side, and then to close up the firewall.
Yeah, speaking
But
of
otherwise, it's a
ventilation
lovely
in
shore
that,
house.
speaking of ventilation in the attic, the bathrooms have vents that go into the attic instead of going out through the roof.
That's not-
Minor issue.
That's not minor, but Frank, minor, but not code. Is that right?
not code for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least here again. So we've gotten fortunate in a couple of places where the inspector let us run the tube up to an existing roof vent. And we used the flexible aluminum ducting and we took it right up to there and
Cool.
just strapped it onto the framing near the existing vent. And then if we're replacing the roof, obviously we're going to cut new holes and have jacks for those things. And then the other one that they used to do was to run the vent towards the eave vent. Under the eave, you have the screens
Mm-hmm.
that let air out, but now they're saying that moisture just gets trapped under the eave and it's not a good thing either. So letting it go up the roof is the best solution for that.
Yeah, if you
Frank-
if you happen to be in the attic and someone turns on the vent, it could be bad.
Yeah,
Well, it's a moisture issue, right, Frank? Like
Yeah.
it's not a summer issue, it's a winter issue. The warm, damp air comes up into the attic and into the cold air, and then it condenses and gets on the insulation of the wood. And over time, again, it's one of those like I'll call it if the dishwasher issue was like a C class issue, this is like a B class issue. Like over time, it will cause damage, I think, right, Frank? But
Yeah.
not like a this year, next year thing.
it could start growing mildew and things like that if the moisture
Yeah.
is just pulling right up into the attic space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay. Yeah. Good
who
point. I didn't think it was that serious.
who handles that kind of thing? Like, who do I if we had similar issues like that and we wanted to avoid them, get them resolved, like what kind of contractor is the kind of person that would come and diagnose and or provide the services to resolve those types of things, like with these venting things and fans and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I think you're probably going to end up with two people unless your roofer does other jobs too, because the roofer is going to be able to cut the hole and get the jack up there and make sure everything's watertight. But then he's probably not going to go in the attic and bring your pipe up into the hole unless he's, unless he does, we do it ourselves. But most roofers just do roofing. They don't want to do anything else. So you might
Right.
need a handyman to take your venting and get it up to the hole.
Although the extend, what do you think, Frank? The roofings, I wouldn't touch that, or I'd want a roofer to do it. But like the extending the vent to the extending the from the fan to the vent, if the fan's already there, is probably something that you could almost do yourself if you're comfortable.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Adding a
Because,
fan, now you're talking to an electrician, right? So
yeah, so what we typically do, we'll take a piece of like 4-inch pipe. It could be single wall pipe, but if you can, depending where the roof vent is or wherever they're going to cut the roof vent is, if there's framing near there, that you can strap that rigid pipe to it and going out the hole, then you just take the flex pipe from the fan and attach it to your rigid piece. And if you're going to get the hole cut, you can have them cut it wherever you want. We usually try to do it on the back side of the house so it's not visible. Even if they're going to add more regular roof vents, they'll try to put them on the back side of the house too.
Frank, is it allowable? I know we have it in our house here, but like you can go roof vent, you can go soffit vent, which I haven't actually seen, but you can also do just out of the side of the house, right? You can do a outside the sidewall kind of vent too, which would be more like a handyman thing.
Yeah. Typically it depends on the framing there, because if on the framing for the ridge, there's probably a stud or 2 or 3 right in the middle. So if you want your vent right in the center, so it looks nice from the outside, you'd have to box in that framing so you can cut the hole where you want it. And a lot of people, we were just talking to Michelle, because she's getting some solar attic vents installed with her new roof.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, those are going to go on the roof itself, but they do make them for that vent that you're talking about. So when the
side vent,
yeah,
gable vent, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when the temperature, usually people around here set them for like 90 degrees, so they'll come on when it hits 90 up there, and that does a few things. It keeps the house cooler, and then it extends the life of the roof as well, because it doesn't have all that high heat all the time.
So probably not a cheap problem to fix if you've got to cut a hole in the roof.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, for now, I know maybe it's not code, but like I was saying, just to at least extend it to where if you already have a vent in the roof, like eyebrow vents, you'll see them like 3 or 4 on one side of the roof. You can get your pipe up to there and strap it close. That way the air is going to make it outside at least. And then, that would suffice. There should be a flapper on the vent, on the bathroom vent fan that opens and closes with the fan. So it's supposed to not let cold air blow back down.
Right.
Yeah.
And insects in.
And insects and rodents. The other thing we've done too is to actually put one of the dryer vents at the end of our hose at the vent, so that one has a flapper on it too. So that gives you double doors for protection.
But I think it's a B class issue, right? It's not going to cause you an issue today, tomorrow. And if you're going up and you're monitoring your attic and you don't see any issues, you know, not saying don't do it, but you can probably coast on it for a while.
Mhm.
But if you start to see like mildew, to Frank's point, you start to see like mildew on the wood near the vent or above the vent or in the insulation, then it's like, yeah, you should fix that stuff.
Okay, great points.
I think it depends on the airflow in the attic and your environment. I mean, there's a lot of things, right? So we have, I mean, look, I try and I'm an engineer, so I'm a bit anal retentive by nature. We have our primary bathroom vent, which my wife never turns on, goes in, but I do, but goes into our attic. It just, you know, straight pipe vent into the attic. And it's been that way for 10 years, never seen an issue. I keep meaning to put in an Acquire fan and to route it to like a side wall vent. Yeah, I'll get to it maybe when I retire in 5 years, right? As opposed to like 2 houses ago, like we started to see, you know, like signs of like dampness and moisture in the winter when the warm air would come in the attic and condense and droplets, and that led to like moldy looking stuff on the studs and the underside of the roofing drywall or plywood sheathing. And at that point I was like, yeah, we're going to fix that right away. So I think it's just a matter of like monitoring. Is that fair, Frank?
Yeah, that's a great point.
We're
And-
having a
and-
lot of those same kind of symptoms right now in one of our units. Like we've got outlets and light switches and even a breaker box. They're like sweating. They're either getting mildew around them, or we're literally seeing like drips coming down, like rusty drips from the breaker box, that kind of stuff. So it sounds like it's this same kind of thing. It's moisture and heat handling between like the AC and the outside air, the attic, the inside walls, and then the inner, like
Yeah.
the actual inside space as well, right?
Jeff, I never appreciated that until we had this place down the shore. Like when you walk inside, there's a vent on the ceiling, like maybe 3 feet in from the front door. And we got one of these Anderson screen windows that like you can, you know, you can pull the window down, it becomes a screen. And we started leaving it open because we're like, hey, we have a screen now. And when we hit these crazy heat waves and the warm air would come in 3 feet in, it would hit that cold air conditioned vent. And it would, you know, it would start dripping like I thought there was a plumbing leak upstairs. It was that
Right.
bad. So like, it's amazing. So I wonder in that situation, if you opened up that outlet cover or switch cover and you started like basically like, you know, around the edges of the box, you started like put some, you know, spray some foam in there and get one of those like foam insulating gaskets. I wonder if that will help. That would solve 85% of your problem. That's just a hunch.
Yeah, we had another unit in that same building dripping from one of the AC vents when it was really hot during the day, and they just installed a new thermostat and that handled it. But our understanding is that we have no insulation in the attic. We don't know where our venting is or what the status of that is in the attic either. And we're over the last couple of years, we're just getting repeated mildew, sweating walls, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, that cannot be safe for a lot of reasons, like electrical shorts, dampness, etc. Not to mention if we have a couple of high-end tenants in there, and it's like, that's not the experience that we want to curate for them either. So it sounds like we need to have a multi-layer approach to avoid that kind of stuff with this. I mean, it's a 1950s quad, but it's like clearly we are not managing that aspect of it at the level that we should.
Yeah, they have you mentioned the entryway and things like that. There are a few fans out there that you can set I guess they have moisture sensing capabilities, and they'll come on when they sense too much moisture in the air, and they're basically automatic, and they'll run until the moisture is gone. I guess some tenants might not like that, to have the fan on all that time, but it's only on because there's an issue with excessive moisture in the air. And those, the ones that we use are made by Panasonic, and they're really nice and they're quiet. You probably couldn't even hear it running. But that's,
And that vents to outside or to the attic or
they will vent to the
whatever you
outside
choose.
too. Yeah,
I
they
see.
should be vented to the exterior as well. But and the other thing that Chris made me think of too is like if you're in a place, or whether it's your rental or your home, some homes in the bathroom, when people take a shower, they just, it holds all the steam, and some don't. So it's a case by case thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think for us, being that these guys use AC and it's hot right now, hot and humid in Florida, like we're like a Coke can basically. It's cold and cold, cold and dry, and then hot and moist, and it just like there's no division between the two that would allow it to avoid some kind of sweating at some point. So we're gonna put a multi-layered approach into that with all these different types of things, maybe a vapor barrier or something, I don't know, and try to make it so that building just doesn't do that anymore. I think it's just the second floor that we have those issues, because the first floor we haven't gotten any complaints, and in fact we asked one of the tenants and they said that they haven't seen anything like the second floor seeing.
Yeah, it seemed like that attic space might be part of the issue.
Yep. Nice. Thanks, guys. That's very helpful. Sorry for the subroutine here.
No problem at all.
I will say that the Panasonic fans that Frank mentioned, he was modest. They're the Cadillacs. I mean, they're the best, quietest, most reliable. They're awesome.
Nice. We'll check
Yeah.
them out.
They're very good. Home Depot actually started carrying Panasonic. I was surprised. For this last job we just finished, I picked up a Panasonic for their bathroom, and it's been years. I forget what the brand is that they always carry, and even though theirs are quiet, I bought one of their quiet ones for one bathroom and a Panasonic for the other, and there's no contest. The Panasonic you can't even hear, like I said. So we'll stick with Panasonic.
And Frank, as long as you're talking about bathroom fans, I like the idea of the ones that had the automatic humidity sensor. My worry was if I turned the air conditioning down because we went away for a week on vacation, it would turn on and stay on in perpetuity. There's also these bathroom switches that they're meant to hook to like a light and a fan line, and when you turn it on, the light and the fan go on, and when you turn it off, the light goes off, but it will leave the fan on for like a half hour after, or we can adjust it, right? So anyway, now you're getting into like ADHD fan humidity management territory, which as an engineer I appreciate, but there's a lot of options in terms of humidity management, but you just got to think it through. So
yeah, well, especially these days with all the well, AI is probably not the best term, but things like that. Things have come so far from when I started working in this business.
And the houses are getting tighter and tighter, and
yeah, so tight. I don't know if you guys, seems like you and Jeffrey especially might enjoy this old house, and
oh yeah,
the last house they did you see where they tested was it the air exchange rate? They had some massive system in the basement. It was just amazing, and their readings came in so low, it was unbelievable. It was so tight.
you need one of those like air heat exchangers, right?
Yeah,
air exchangers, heat exchangers,
yeah.
I'm curious how everybody's seeing the marketplace. Like I'm seeing in my market a surge of like suddenly multi-units at still a bit of wish pricing are starting to pop up in the market, right? It's been interesting. I'm actually seeing it like, it was very rare that I'd see anything in MLS that would ever pencil positive cash flow. I actually saw a few things in the last week that actually had my golly, you could make $400 to $600 a month. I mean, like, wow. Like, now I haven't seen them, and I think a lot of them are pretty trashy, but like the market definitely seems to be turning, and I was just curious if anybody else is seeing any shifts or trends in the market.
As far as where we're looking, in the St. Louis area, we did have our agent send us a property that was a triplex. It was a fourplex, and sounded like they made two of the units into one larger townhome style, and it still had two 1-bed, 1-bath units, and they had tenants already in place, and the cash flow was really good. But once we dug a little deeper into the area, it wasn't quite as nice as we want it to be. It was probably close to a D area, and I guess that's why the numbers were as good as they were.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, along the same lines on that one that we just looked at, what I've been seeing for the longest time, like last year, is anytime something came on the market and they had an open house or something, if I went to go see it, there'd be like 50 other people there. You know, all these offers above asking. It's like so many people wanted to get into real estate, it seemed like. With this one, it's a little further out, lower price point, but yeah, this one had days on market, and I don't know if the buyers were really motivated, but they were. I definitely had some, you know, some room to start with a lower offer. Dare I say disrespectful?
Yeah, I was just surprised to hear Zuber say that, what is it, 9 out of the 10 buyer market, like best buyer markets or biggest buyer markets in the nation are in Florida. I don't think I've really been seeing that locally. Of course, he didn't mention Jacksonville. He mentioned like Gainesville and all these other places. So, you know, I'm not looking at my buybacks every day, of course. So what do I know?
Yeah, that was an interesting list. I would have never guessed that.
I mean, I know people are saying, "Oh, it's, you know, Florida's crashing," but I never heard it from anybody other than like a YouTuber that's trying to get views. So
Yeah.
when I heard it from Zuber on the news, I was like, okay, well, that's maybe there's some truth to that.
Is anybody seeing any rent degradation? Like we've generally been able to raise rents, you know, on every unit every year for the last 3-4 years. I'd say on one unit, which certainly had some unicorn characteristics, right? I had to lower rent by $50 because, you know, in exchange for getting somebody to move in 7 days, right? But definitely a little bit of, you know, I wonder if there's a little bit of tempering, but I was just curious if anybody else is seeing anything on rent pricing.
I've got I think like 6 different zips, and I have not seen any of them come down. I've seen them be flat for a year or two from time to time, until now, where one of our zips, i.e. neighborhood, I mean, it's a neighborhood, it's come down at least $100 a month, if not 200 de facto. But we're pretty sure that that's a neighborhood specific thing due to it's just a young rehabbing market where a bunch came on the market all at once and a big apartment complex. So it's like, I think that's just that's very specific to that neighborhood. Otherwise, in my city, I haven't seen any rents actually come down in any significant way.
I've seen them come down, but it's in Phoenix, and it's also with a specific target or strategy, which is rent by room. So we saw when I first started in January of, I'll just say August of 23, we were about 215, and this is per week, by the way. So you can just times 4. Let's just call that what is that? $30-$60 difference between then and now, a year and some change later. We're down around 200 now is what I'm trying to get at a week. So it's a $60 to the downside. But then again, that's rent by room. It's also because a ton of investors flooded in there in the last year and a half doing the exact same strategy. Because I thought, oh, I'm a genius. Yay, we're doing great. And everything was awesome. And, then all of a sudden everybody and their mother started getting in there doing the same thing. And there's too much supply is why.
Yeah, that's a great question. And a few of us were having that discussion about a week ago, when the FMRs came out for 2025, and we just were checking the places that we have rentals in, and the first one I checked was down. So we're in 3 zip codes in St. Louis, and the one that I checked went from 1208 for 2024 to 1090 for
Wow.
2025. So that was a big jump, and it made me nervous. So we checked all the other markets that we're in, and thankfully all those are up. So I don't know. Why
Yeah,
just
I
That's
just
really
checked
funny.
our FMRs also, and I think all of
Yeah.
mine are up. They're at least very high.
Yeah. That's really funny, Frank, because the way I mean, I don't remember the details that Matt was talking about, but they calculate that in some like rolling historical average last couple of years. And so for it to be down, given what happened in COVID, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too, especially for that much of a decrease, right? That's what 100 would be 1090, 1190, $120 or something like that. But in the other zip code, the one we're closing on the 5th, we're supposed to close on another 3-1, and the rents there are still strong, like they have been over the last couple of years. And you're right. I think Matt says that they take, was it the last 5 years of 7 years, so that 2 fall off every time, or well, that's how they do it. They calculate 5 out of the 7.
And it's the oldest 5, not so in other words, the most recent 2 years are not included in that, right?
That's I thought it was the other way around, but
What's the most recent 5?
I thought so. I
Well,
don't
then
know.
wouldn't it just be 5 years then? And the 7 wouldn't make sense then, because there is no 7 in that, right?
Right. Yeah, you're right.
I thought I seem to remember it was the last 5 years, but 3 out of those 5. So you're hitting 5 out of the 7.
Yeah, that's what I was.
All right.
We'll have to bug him and ask him.
Yeah.
To clarify that. Cody, if you're listening, do you know the answer to that?
I thought it was it's the last 7 years, but they only do like the last 2 don't count, and then the previous 5 do.
Okay.
That's what I thought it was.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
the
sense.
oldest 5 out of 7.
Yep.
So I'm in, can you hear me? I'm in Alabama market, just outside Huntsville for the Florence. And mine was listed for 1595. That's what the management company suggested. So we started out with 1595. A week later, a very weak response, and then I knew that the school was starting pretty soon, so I had it lowered by 100. So now it was 1495, and it got rent really quickly. But all other houses that are comparable houses near mine, they're still sitting there after 30 days or something. And I think it may be, I don't know, depending on the buy box or the rent box. Mine's a family home, so the school starting time probably makes a bit of a difference. And in Washington, I have a 1 unit that's coming up for rent next month, the end of this, next month. And I'm looking, and but the inventory of a similar duplex is very low. So I guess I wouldn't have to worry about, but it's not as hot as it was before. I can feel that market's softening a little bit. People hunting for the bargains.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of wishful landlords out there or property management companies that are not, they're just not as quick to drop their rents aggressively so that they can get the thing rented immediately, or maybe both. But that's what I'm seeing. At least one of my zips is like just a lot of wishful rent pricing that is very theoretical, and then when you actually hit the ball with the bat, it doesn't actually happen. And I see those days on market just ramping up on some of where it's a weaker, where it really is weaker, even though the numbers haven't necessarily turned up that way yet.
It's interesting you frame it that way, Jeffrey, because I only have a couple of my units under PM. Where I'm self-managing the rest. I feel like my property managers are eager to just cut the rent to get it filled. And do they care if it's, 100 or 200 less a month? No, not really. Like, so it's just, I don't know, interesting the way you framed it. Makes me
Well,
kind
I
of
can tell
question
you,
my PM.
yeah, I can tell you factually that the market I'm talking about, more than half of those are managed by property managers. You could just tell on Zillow because they wallpaper every picture with their, like, the watermark.
Yeah.
And then you look down and then it says, oh, this is managed by so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So maybe it's regional, that down here in the South, we're just kind of like, slow and take it easy. I don't know if it's specific to that, but that's definitely my perception. I think it's based upon, I think that's data driven enough to say, I could be confident about either of those or both of those being a source of the issue. But I don't know, I haven't like personally talked to those people, but it certainly looks that way.
Well, talking about watermark pictures, I saw Dion's listing in my Rentox. We're in the same neighborhood. He had watermarks everywhere in every single pictures, and then even he has his email watermarked on his picture. So I thought, oh wow, I recognize Dion's rental immediately.
Yeah, I've heard him talk about that.
Let's see. Esther, are you there? We haven't seen you for a while. Hope everything's going well.
Hi, Did you say Esther or Chester?
Yeah, Esther.
can you hear me?
Hi, Esther. Yeah, we can hear you.
I've been away.
Okay. You were, I forget who we were talking to the other day, but I was wondering if you were able to get both your units in Gary rented.
Yeah.
Oh,
Got
good.
it rented finally. Yeah. One is moving in this Friday. I mean, couple of days. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Were you,
It's lower than what I thought actually.
yeah, I remember you saying that. That's why I was curious. But did you, last time we talked, you had a rent number. Were you able to stick there? I think it was 1,200.
Yeah. It was 1,200. The other one is 13. I think 1350.
Mhm.
The 4 bedroom one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 3-bedroom is 1,200, and your property manager there was confident that you guys could get to 12, huh? And you were originally thinking it might be a little bit high.
Yeah, I was following the FMR.
Okay.
Yeah, it is even lower than FMR, and then when he submitted to Section 8 is even lower, like 1100, 1150, and he's very careful actually checking out the credit before and all the credits that the tenant has.
Are you doing Section 8 or are you just using FMR to price traditional commercial?
First, we got Section 8, and then we declined it, and finally we got just regular tenant. Yeah, I think it's best to check what was the market or what's the FMR. It's listed. I mean the listed price.
Yeah.
But FMR seems to be a lot higher than the realistic price. Realistic rent, yeah.
That was my question. I feel like it seems like some markets FMR is higher and some markets FMR is lower, and it becomes confusing how to use FMR, right? So
I think they can locally change the pricing based upon different algorithms and stuff, depending on what's going on in the county or that particular PHA. That's my understanding in theory, at least.
For my experience, is depending the administrator of Section 8. So particularly, I have these two properties at Gary, and the property manager said they're bad. When if it is next city over in Hammond, for example in Hammond, just next door, west of Gary, they're pretty good. They're pretty much very close to FMR, but there is the jurisdiction, the construction jurisdiction over there is very tricky. Everything money over there, and the price also, the home price also a lot higher too. Yeah, there's plus and minus, but even though 1200 and 1350 is still coming out, the cash flow still coming out way better. I mean, it's good. Yeah.
awesome.
An experience to be. I thought that a lot of demand, but actually it's a bit oversaturated in Gary area. A lot of investors going into the area.
Yeah, because you mentioned that also about the contractors too, right? It took a little longer to get the work done because they were spread kind of thin.
Yeah. It's unreliable workers basically. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm looking into more in Washington right now. We'll see if I could find something that need to be fixing, need to be upgraded or something like you guys doing. Since we have a home also in Eastern Washington, so I think we can spend more time in here, and it's easier for us to do fixing or hiring someone just for little work here and there. We're gonna try, see if we can find. Today I'm contacting my realtor friend, see if he could find anything.
Okay, yeah. And Dion might have some contacts for you too. Have you spoken to him about that as far as contractors and handymen?
Oh, Dion is in the Western Washington.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Eastern Washington right now. I mean, I'm looking into Eastern Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, Western Washington is pretty hard. There is one that I was looking into, triplex, but yeah, it's a bit, I don't know, it's uncertain, and there is existing tenant, and there is possible two evictions. The seller doesn't want to ask the tenant to move out. It's gonna, I don't know if I want to deal with those,
Hmm.
especially in Western Washington.
I think Matt has some other guys in his boot camp who are in Eastern Washington / Idaho, Coeur d'Alene area. Might be interesting to just put a feeler out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's mine is central, Eastern Washington, but they say Central Washington, so it's about 2 hours to Idaho.
Josh, aren't you in Eastern Washington?
Yeah, I'm in Spokane. I'm about 40 minutes from Idaho.
No.
Spokane, Coeur d'Alene area. Yeah. Yeah.
Same here. I'm also in Spokane.
Oh,
Hey, Josh.
okay. I'm in Moses Lake.
You're in where?
Moses Lake.
Moses Lake.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Cool. Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, I also wanted to ask, I've been trying to just analyze and underwrite deals. And I wanted to get a grasp of how much landlords are paying for water, sewer, and garbage per month. Like, say you have like a duplex or something like that. How much should I be roughly trying to estimate for?
Boy, well, mine are all with property management companies.
Hmm.
But I can try to figure out something here.
I can offer a humble perspective. I don't know if it's relevant from a benchmarking perspective because it's Pennsylvania, but like what I found is there's a radical difference based on tenant usage. So I've got an elderly mid-60s gentleman who lives by himself, and I actually have the building sub-metered, so I've got very accurate data, and he's probably $30 a month, maybe, right? Sometimes less, right? I've got a single gentleman in his 30s, 40s who's a prima donna and has a lot of other issues, and I think is shooting up steroids, which is what causes my plumbing issues, and has the nicest apartment I've ever seen. It belongs in Architectural Digest. He's running he's running about 80 to 90 a month. And I've got a older couple, best tenants, some of the best tenants I have. Kids are out of they're empty nesters, they're great. They're running like $160 a month in water. Now, I think the wife's working from home. I think they're both a bit ADHD on cleanliness and stuff like that. So I would tell you, I found, and then their previous tenants were a couple. They were both in the medical field. Husband worked at the local hospital. Wife worked from home. I don't know if she was a radiologist or a radiologist tech, but working from home. And their bills were not that dissimilar, like 100, 120, because she was home all day and she was working, and they were. So I would tell you, it for what it's worth. It's a data point. But what I've been really surprised by is how variable it is based on, do they work from home? Are they what I would consider casual people or ADHD neat freaks? And they have kids, and I think there's a lot of factors there. So I just be careful about using rules of thumb, which is why I ended up sub-metering. But just food for thought.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great point. Because one person was mentioning like this, I recently went to a meetup and I ended up meeting a bunch of people around my age doing what I'm trying to do, which was awesome. And one of them gave a rule of thumb of around 80. I mean, like when you're trying to underwrite, try to do like 80 to 90 per door. And so that's what I've been kind of doing. But yeah, I haven't been accounting for that beforehand, and that's been messing up my calculations and what makes a good deal.
So I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but most of my tenants pay their own water. So that's what we typically do here. And then if they didn't, you can have meter it out and do like the RUBS program, and then have them
Yeah.
pay for it that way too. So there's a couple different ways you can
Yeah.
do it and have it on the tenant.
I was just
I
gonna
would-
say, I think that $80 number makes sense if you assume it's a 2 bedroom. So I wonder if I were to pull the thread on that, $40 per bedroom or per occupant. So if you've got a 2 bedroom, 80, 1 bedroom, 40, if you've got a 3 bedroom, maybe 120, right? I mean, and heaven
Yeah.
forbid you have teenagers, right? Because I remember as a teenager, I probably bathed twice a day, right? So
Okay.
food for thought.
Yeah, yeah. Ideally, if I could have the tenants pay the water, that'd be awesome. I initially thought that was always the case, but within this last month and a half, I'm like, oh, that's not really the norm. I don't think. That's why I wanted to ask Josh. It seems like in
Oh.
Spokane, most people pay.
I have single family homes, so they pay all utilities.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
But the
Yeah.
previous guy said the magic word, RUBS, right? I forget their acronym, right? Rationalized utility basis of estimate or something like that. But like I sub-meter, but I inherited a couple of properties where like the previous landlord just said, hey, there's 3 units, the water bill comes in, you split it 3 ways, right? Or you split it by bedrooms, right? And I'll be honest, even though I don't feel, it makes me a little nervous, like it's so easy, right? So like RUBS is an established accepted practice. You can do some diligence on it. It's it could be something to consider.
That's what I do for my place right now where I'm renting, is that we all split the water bill. So yeah. That's been my question. I've been asking multiple investors. I'm like, okay, like what's your situation for this? Just so I can get a well-rounded answer. But yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sub-metering water where I can and electricity where my buildings are integrated, because I'm putting in like, split units, which are what most electricity draw. But yeah, I'll be honest, like RUBS is kind of a tempting alternative, right?
Yeah. Underwriting small multifamily can definitely be challenging. What about the other things, Jacob, like snow removal and lawn care?
I was assuming that I can't do the snow removal all the time. Yeah, I haven't really considered that. I know that's something that like for snow removal, like in Spokane, it depends on the winter, because I've heard that it can vary a lot between like a really heavy winter and almost none. So that's something I also really haven't looked into. So, and I know for lawn care, I would be most likely doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't always have, I guess more of the time we have lawn care, it's like $40. I think it's $40 a cut. And they come, and in also that's in St. Joseph, Missouri. So we have to be careful because the city will fine you if your grass is too tall, things like that. So the lawn care is like $40 a cut, and then the snow removal, like you said, I guess it depends on the season. Sometimes you'd have 2 or 3 removals, or you might have more depending on a really bad winter. So those things are a little bit hard to determine.
Mm-hmm.
Frank, in the heat of summer, does that mean they're cutting once a week for you?
No, it's once every 2 weeks.
Do
Yeah,
you pay
on that
for
property.
do you pay for lawn mowing, Frank?
No, that's a service that has all their own equipment.
Also, something
So
I was
the tenant-
considering. Oh, go for it, Esther.
So the tenant pay for it, right? Pay for the landscaping.
Well, that
Mhm.
comes out of it comes out of our gross rents, but the tenant doesn't pay themselves for it.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Mine. I made them to take care of them. Every
Yeah.
one of them.
On the
Utilities and landscaping.
on the single families, yes. The tenant takes care of everything, which is super nice. And we've had that debate recently too. Single families are super easy, but they're not quite as profitable as small multifamily in most areas. So That's a
Okay.
toss up. Yeah.
I tried something a little unique this year on my quad. I added a $10 a month landscaping fee on top of the base rent, and just told them that that was going to be the new rent, and I didn't hear a thing about it. And so far, we've got, I think we have half. Yeah, we have half of the quadruplex on that system now, and by the end of the year, we'll have everybody. I think, no, by the end of March, so it'll be $10 per month per tenant on top of the base rent. Never heard anybody doing that, but I was like, I don't want to pay for this landscaping, so let's pass it on to them.
Yeah, that's a good point. We were going back and forth with our property manager in Wisconsin about rent increases, and they had suggested, because they were going to probably raise it $50, and they suggested just doing the having that go towards the water bill. So it was just like a rent increase, but we got reimbursed for the water, $50 a month. So there's a few different ways to handle it, I guess.
Yeah, any way you can nickel and dime, like slice and dice it, to me seems like, I don't know. I just think for the psychology of the renter, it's like they may not even notice it or care, but for anybody that does, it seems like every justification you can offer that's legit lowers the resistance that they may have to, because it's all rent at the end of the day. I mean, rent's rent,
Right.
no matter what you call it. But you call it different things for people, they'll think of it that way,
Yeah, and like you said, it's easier if all that stuff is set up before a tenant moves in, right? Because
Yeah.
it's harder to implement once you have people there for a little while.
Especially, Frank, for the tenant discretionary things like water or electricity and anything they control, and they can turn, the only reason I'm kind of grimacing is like when I decided to do, I have one triplex and it's all in one electrical meter, and when we eventually put split systems in to make it more comfortable. But when I saw a tenant who had one unit where some bedrooms had an air conditioner on full blast and some bedrooms had the windows open and some bedrooms had both, I just pretty much lost my mind. Meanwhile, I'm getting in the summer, I'm getting like a $450 electric bill. So I was like, at that point, I'm like, yeah, we're going to sub-meter these puppies and solve this problem.
Yeah.
I wish I had a 400 some odd dollar bill. Mine was 650. Guy was smoking pot, and his solution to not getting it in the house was leaving the window open in the summer in Arizona. So,
Ooh,
and I
yeah.
pay utilities. So yeah, good times. Right.
Ouch.
Wow.
I have 2 units, and one unit I added utility. I pay water and trash, and so I included it into the rent. For the other unit, when it was leased, I asked my property manager that I wanted to have similar amount of the money for the utilities. So their rent is cheaper, but then they collect extra money, specified amount of money for the utilities. When I noticed the property management company didn't apply the 9% property management fee for the utilities for one unit, but the other unit that has a utility amount included in the rent, they charged everything for the property management fee for 9%. So I asked about it, and they said, no, that's how they do it. So the next time when I lease this unit, I'm going to have it separately, but I get the same amount of money. I will not have a utility money charged with the property management fee. So you might want to talk to a property management company like that too. They might do that.
Would that work out the same though, Anna? So if you add money into the rent for utilities and the property manager is getting whatever 10%, isn't that work out the same if the money for utilities comes in separately and they put a 10% charge on that?
No, because the one that has a separate utility, it's gonna go into the accounting system as a utility, so they won't charge property management fee on that
Oh,
amount. So that amount, 100% to me, so I can pay the trash, whatever, the water. But the other unit that has included in the rent, I will have 10% or 9% less on the rent, and then whatever the money that comes out is a little bit smaller by 10% than the other unit. So I
okay.
didn't know that some property management company does it, because I told them, what would that make a big difference if I tell them, if I tell you to raise the rent by the amount of the utilities, or keep the rent, the way it is, and then but in the fine print, the tenant's responsible for, say, $90 for water, trash a month, but the rent on the lease is this much. That makes a little bit of difference. That I didn't know that until very recently.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll have to check with mine, see what the difference might be.
Also, something I was thinking about, I don't know how practical it'd actually be, but say if I were to like mow my own lawns for all my own properties for like a number of years, I was also thinking about like cutting out a lot of the lawn to put like big bushes of like lavender or plants that don't require as much maintenance. And that way it's a much smaller lawn, and you can just do it for like 5 minutes, cut the lawn, just to try to minimize any sort of maintenance. Also, like, yeah, natural plants that grow in the area that would self-pollinate, self-reproduce. Something I was thinking about.
There's a whole movement on the East Coast here around clover lawns, which never grow more than an inch or two tall, and yeah, and natural, yeah, that it's totally worth thinking about. We haven't done it yet, but my wife's testing it out, looking to test it out.
Yeah, and I was thinking if I'm saving the money from paying for the lawns, I would just reinvest that, put that into smaller lawns and more natural, less maintenance. So I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds like a good
Gave
way.
a choice. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I gave a choice to the tenant whether they're gonna maintain their yards, or they pay $60 toward the lawn maintenance a month. And they all choose to maintain their own yards. But then I have a threshold that if the lawn gets really ugly, that too long and they don't cut it, then there's a little backup clause that if, management company gives them a warning, and then if they don't do it, then it's just automatically they're gonna have to be charged for the lawn maintenance fee instead of being responsible for cutting their own lawn. So
I was
that's
thinking
another way of doing it.
I was thinking about that too. I was like, okay, well, what if I just left it up to the tenant? But then I was thinking there's a fine line of like them claiming that like, oh yeah, I've been taking care of it, but the lawn's just dying. Or they'll
It's
just
fine.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I
but
think that's up to you to
no.
find that and to notify them and then charge against that if they're clearly negligent.
Gotcha.
See, in our area, we don't have to worry about lawn dying. We worry about lawn getting too long. So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, in Eastern Washington, yeah, if you spend so much efforts to get the lawn established, you want to make sure that you get that one maintained. Yeah, I totally get that.
I wonder, so Jacob, you don't have any places yet that you do the lawn care, right? Right now?
No properties yet. No,
It's
but that's
just
forward thinking.
you're just thinking that out. So I wonder if you're gonna enjoy doing that, you know,
I
once
I know.
once you get a couple under your belt, you know. But so the other thing, I think the way you're thinking about it is great, but if you are cutting the grass, if you can find a way, I think like Jeffrey alluded to, adding something in the rent, you know, whether it is yard care or lawn care, it's just that you're doing it. Whether it is $10 a month or, you know, $20 a month, at least that might help you stay a little more motivated for a little longer. Cause I couldn't see having to think about going and mowing,
Yeah.
you know, myself.
And so that's the idea behind some DIYers. They want to do the whole thing themselves, but how you actually scale is you hire out. So that's also a mindset.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what were they talking about? Oh, so analyzing a property, even if you're going to manage it yourself, you still throw the property management into what you take out for expenses, because if there comes a point where you don't want to manage it anymore, that fee is already built into your numbers. So obviously your cash flow would decrease a little bit, but you already calculated for it. So it's not like you're going to feel a real loss.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I just feel like I've had such a hard time underwriting things already. To add the property management on top of that, it'd be like so low. But I mean, obviously, that's a very proactive way of thinking.
You know, one of my favorite examples of that kind of triggering an expense or an assessment on the tenant is in our leases. We hold them; they're accountable to switch out the AC filters quarterly, right? And so, you know, nobody's doing that initially. And so what we said was, okay, we're going to send them a quarterly email reminding them to do it. They're going to confirm that they've done it. If they don't confirm it, we're going to let them know, look, we're sending somebody out there to change those filters out. And the cost of us doing that will be assessed to you, since this is your responsibility and you have failed to let us know that you've done that. That either gets their attention and they go ahead and follow through, or we just do it and then we just charge them because it's their responsibility, and it's a lease violation that is chargeable because it is on them to do so. So those kind of things could be in, I think I mean, depending on states, I'm sure, but I think those kind of things could be integrated into a lease agreement. And then that accountability turns into an economic factor that either gets the job done or makes it so that you're not losing money on those kind of things.
Hey, Jeffrey, are you managing the unit yourself, the property?
Yeah, we're self-managing.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That gives me idea. I'm gonna ask my property manager how they make sure the tenant change the filter.
Yeah, there's all sorts of little things like that you know, sometimes we rely on tenants for, or we think we're relying on them for, but they're really just blowing it off because they think like a lot of tenants think. And it's like, well, it's our problem at the end of the day. You know, we own the HVAC and the drain lines and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, we got to police that. If we don't police it, it's like we're left holding the bag at the end of the day. It's not the tenant's problem unless we make it their problem. And if we don't make it their problem, then, well, regardless of how much of a problem we make it for them, we still own those things. They do not have the responsibility or the problem of ownership. We do, you know. So at some point, it's like you just got to kick things into gear somehow.
So do you supply the filter for them?
No, they have to get their own filters. It's 100% their problem. And then if they make it our problem, then we charge them for every nickel and dime that it costs us to get the AC guy out there to do it for them. Not our problem. This goes right onto their bill.
Are you able to prove that was due to the dirty filter from the HVAC area, or how do you make a case against the tenants?
Well, you know, we haven't had any tenants that lied to us or argued that they are doing it or anything like that. I'm sure that's a possibility. I'm sure that will occur at some point, probably even for us. But I think the simple answer to that question is that if they don't respond and it's clear that they're either, I mean, maybe they did it, but they just didn't communicate that they did it, and so we have no way of confirming that it's been done. When we send somebody out there, that person is a professional, and so they are if we're sending an HVAC special, we're sending an AC guy, right? And so the AC guy looks at that filter and says, yeah, that has not been changed anytime recently. They put that in writing. That's our proof, right there. And so we'll enforce that on the lease. I mean, any tenant could litigate anything if they ultimately want to, but I'm taking it out of their deposit if they're not going to just pay it right up front, and then they're not getting another lease from me ever again if they play that game. I'll put them on month to month or just not renew. That's fine. We'll replace them with somebody else.
I was wondering about that response. I was wondering about the response of the tenants by putting that in the lease. Like, I feel that not a lot of landlords will do that. So if they were kind of put in that situation, like very firm, I was just wondering, like the amount of turnover that would cause.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the demand, right? And because their experience as a tenant is the aggregate of hundreds, if not thousands, of touch points of them enjoying the kitchen or having a problem with the AC, or I mean, there's ups and downs across the board. So the way I think of it is that if I have a tenant that is so thin-skinned and so disinterested in maintaining my unit as to the bare minimum responsibility that they have, and that is so perturbs them so badly that we actually hold them accountable to what they already signed and agreed to in writing in a lease, then I don't care about their experience. I don't want them in my unit. I want somebody who is like, oh, that's not a big deal. I'll just get some AC filters and change them up. Or I'm happily going to pay because I screwed up and I understand it's my problem. Like that's a grown up, right? And not all tenants are like that, right? But if I have a baby tenant, it's like, hey man, a quarter into this lease, I'm going to know, and I already know I'm not renewing that person's lease, or I'm gonna factor that into my judgment call. And if they turn over, that's a good turnover. You don't want a tenant like that because they're probably doing 6 other problematic things to your unit that you have no clue about. So it gives us a chance to assess the tenant. I mean, again, it's a very minor thing to get a quarterly email that says, hey, just a reminder to change your AC filters. Let us know that you did it. Reply to this email. Like, you see what I mean? Like that is so unreasonable to have a real issue with that tiny thing. If they can't deal with that as a member of our community, whether it's a multi-unit or a single family or whatever, it's like, I'm already getting the scent, it's already starting to smell like a bad tenant to me.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey, do you do inspections like once or twice a year?
We just started doing annual inspections because my family kept telling me, you should inspect this place every year. We don't really know what's going on. I was like, okay, fine. So we literally are beginning that in the next couple of weeks for the night. I think I brought it up with Lumberjack the other day. That we were going to do it 90 days ahead, and he said it's more like 60 days ahead of the lease renewal. But one way or the other, it's like we're going to start doing that as a discipline to, like, right before we renew, we want to just get our eyes on that unit very briefly and see if there's any reason why we really don't want to renew this person. Or, and by the way, on their behalf, if there's anything that they may not be happy with, or that like they just haven't complained about, that we're responsible to take care of. So it really goes both ways. We take care of them, and they are responsible for maintaining a unit to the, you know, again, kind of the bare minimum. Either way, it's fine.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
of a lot of people that that do the inspections a couple of times a year, and you know, just go around and look for any problems, like the tenant's not reporting, things that could be an issue. Just put eyes on the property, and when they do, they take the filters out there at that time, and that way they kind of know that it's done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's what I was
that'd
saying.
be a
It's like
good
we
idea.
own this stuff. It's like, so we don't want it to go to pot. You know, it's like we got to handle that.
Yeah, it's
'cause
a stress on
they're
your
gonna be gone.
your HVAC is smothered if their filter gets clogged up.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so like we want, when they're gone in 3 years or 2 years or 2 months or whatever it is, it's like we have all that stuff. We're going to give it to the next tenant, but hey, we'd like that stuff to last and be as nice as it could possibly be for as long as possible as well.
Jeffrey, I need to have to manage my remote properties. Oh yeah, my property manager. We don't have any HVAC in Washington State, but my properties in Alabama that I, remote. They have HVAC, and I worry about them. I asked them one time, and then property managers, they said they have a quarterly package delivered for filters to each unit, and then it's tenant's responsibility to change the filter. So they do the deliveries. I think I pay for the filters, and so I always wondered, do they actually really change filters? But by delivering them, guarantees that if filter comes out dirty, I suppose they didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you, Jeffrey, when you send out the email notification that it's time to change the filters, you just accept their, yes, I did it?
Yeah.
I have to have, they have to put the spigot cover on it. And then in order to do it, they have to
We
take a
could.
picture with that.
We could. That's a good idea, actually. But no, so far all we've done is just get their verbal confirmation or their email confirmation that they did it. And then I think my first understanding of it was like, well, you know what, if they lie 4 times to us, and then we, like you were saying, like we go into that annual inspection and we find out that they never really did it. Okay, well, again, that's information about that tenant that we need to know about. But what I like about having that in the lease and actually having that quarterly communication, even if they didn't, even if they were totally negligent, is that now we can hold them financially responsible for whatever it is within reason that they have caused due to not only their negligence, that they defaulted on a lease agreement in that aspect, but in addition to that, they also willfully misled us, lied to us about the state of how they're maintaining the thing, which made it impossible for us to maintain that HVAC properly. And so anything that went wrong due to that, it could be construed that we now collect all of that from the tenant, whether it's their deposit or another assessment from them. So I think just that line of communication, being really diligent, and also being agreed upon up front, so that they're hopefully willing, or at least acting like they're willing, puts us in a really good economic frame, even if and when they do cause damage. Because tenants cause damage here and there. We can count on that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw his question in there, Jeffrey, but I think it was Jason asking if there's a copy of your lease available.
I literally just use Zillow leases.
Okay.
The only difference is that we add a bunch of extra rules. I think we have like 15 rules that we add in the rules addendum. And if anybody wants those, just for just for information purposes, I'm happy to send those. I can copy them out of one of our Zillow leases and send them to whomever. But other than that, I just have a standard Florida Zillow lease that I use. And any of those things like, hey, change the AC filters or something like that, we just put in the rules addendum with the clear enough writing to, kind of just make it like, okay, everybody understands what that is.
Great.
What I can do is I'll just put my email in the chat, and then anybody that wants that just email me, and I'll push it out to y'all.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the things I hear on these calls is I keep hearing about interesting clauses in leases that I think, hey, I think I'll add that to my lease.
Yeah, there's a lot of great ideas, stuff we don't think about. With our stuff being managed by property managers, two of the tenants are Section 8, so they're supposed to get their Section 8 inspections, and then we do an annual inspection. We're just coming up on that year now, so those will be getting done. It'll be interesting to see what, like Dion says, he doesn't care about the inside of the units too much, but still, they could do a lot of damage inside without you knowing it for a year.
Yeah, we try to keep a spreadsheet of anytime we were thinking of, oh my gosh, we should add that to the lease. We just pop it onto that so that whenever our next lease comes up, we take that and add those items to our latest lease. And then we know that latest lease has all our latest goodies in it. And so every lease after that extracts those rules from that, from that like most recent version of the lease, basically. So we're just continuing to pile on protections and stuff like that.
Best practice, man. Hey, Jeffrey, do you have a clause on what you flush down the toilet? Like no flushables and only toilet paper and human waste? Only because I got burned in the last 2 years.
Yeah, we're dealing with those problems too. I think I brought it up last week, and we have not yet added that to the lease, but we will in the next leases that are coming up in the next couple months. And what we do have, I think it's standard. No, maybe it's not. Maybe it is in the rules addendum, but there is something that's like no foreign objects down water lines, something like that. I think we already have it in. I don't know if it's in the Zillow lease or it's in our rules addendum. It's very basic. It's like 1 or 2 sentences. And so what we did when we realized how that's just not detailed enough, it's not explicit enough. Yeah. We sent out an email that read every single tenant the Riot Act about stuff down water lines. And we were like hyper, like bullet. This is all you can put down the kitchen sink. This is all you can put down a toilet. And we were like, you can do this, you could do this, but you can't do this, all the different things that people are likely to do. Just really, really painstaking. So again, people may not read it, but now we've got that in our history of communications that we have communicated. You can't do that. We find out they're doing it. It's not just an implicit agreement anymore. Now it's quite explicit. Like, yeah, cool. you knew you were supposed to do that.
Yeah, it's funny when I go into tenant walkthroughs now, and when I'm in the bathrooms, I look for is there a big thing of flushable wipes right by the toilet? Does the garbage can look like it's full of flushable wipes? I realized one unit where we had them, they started using flushable wipes only, and I should have known it because when I went in the unit to look at something else, like a leaky faucet. In hindsight, I realized there was no paper in the bathroom. It was just flushable wipes.
Oh, what a nightmare.
A small small garbage can that clearly did not have flushable wipes in it. And yeah, like a month later, man, we had it was like toilet Armageddon, right? So
I think I heard Dion say one time that he always has his handyman check the bathrooms to see if there's flushable wipes visible when they go over.
Especially for him, since most of his stuff's on septic tanks.
Mm.
Oh, scary.
Yeah. Dude, what do you guys think about garbage disposals? We're having 3 units refreshed with new tenants, and I'm asking the property managers to remove the garbage disposals.
I was gonna put them in our units, and like Matt, I think Matt's a fan of no. So we ended up not putting them in most, but one building. My agent was like, "Hey, it's kind of standard practice if you want to stay competitive," and so we put them in. But I have no septic. I'm all on sewer. I don't know that I would ever want to do septic. I'd have to really think about that. But yeah, I I I started with the perspective that it's a God-given right, like a dishwasher. But in hindsight, I'm like, I worry that some of our tenants might abuse it. But I will say, in general, I've not seen any abuse yet. But it's made me a little more thoughtful about it.
We have garbage disposals in quite a few of our units. I look at it like a luxury item. Like if I consider the unit to be a really nice unit and we're charging for luxury, that's like you said, a lot of people are like, well, I just need one. And if they need one, then fine. But what we're doing the same policing on those. It's like, I think last year, I think it was 2023, one of our tenants stopped up the garbage disposal with like a fork or something like that. And it cost us 175, $200, something like that, to send a handyman, plumber, whoever it was over there to unstop it. It didn't ruin the garbage disposal. It wasn't a full garbage disposal replacement. But, you know, the nice thing about garbage disposals is that they contain the evidence of the negligence or mistreatment on the tenant's part. And so they just pulled out the fork. They're like, this is, you just violated your agreement. And so I told my assistant, I said, yeah, charge the tenant for that. So tell the tenant, we fixed the problem. This is what it cost us. You caused the problem based upon evidence provided by the professional. So we're assessing that charge to you. Here's the payment, and they
That's a
covered
great
it.
point. Garbage disposals and dishwashers are a forensic proof point. I like that. That's good.
Yes. But again, that's like, I think from a psychological perspective, I can see Lumberjack's point of like, we just don't use them. But I can also, to me, it's like, okay, I have a customer. The customer wants that. They want a lot of things, but that's one of them. If I provide that and then I charge accordingly, I charge rent that it may be even more than they want to pay, but they still want that garbage disposal. Well, I'm making the premium that I get to charge from that, assuming that is a psychological, like assuming it's enough pleasure for them to throw banana peels or whatever down the garbage disposal. It's like, great, I don't care. It's just a service and a product that I'm providing them.
Yeah.
And if I can charge a premium in exchange for that, great. But if it's not a luxury unit, my mindset on that would be no way, Jose. Like stop. They just need clean and safe. Garbage disposal has nothing to do with clean and safe.
I only offer 2 points. Like now that I've gone through some cycles, I would only do garbage disposals in a unit where I've actually scoped the line out to the street to make sure that I didn't have any larger risks. So a garbage disposal could suddenly lead to an $8,000, sewer line repair. And I would tell you that my experience has been that what tenants value the most is, number one, with regards to major appliances, would be in-unit washer and dryer gets me a big boost. The secondary boost I get is an in-unit dishwasher. Garbage disposal, I haven't seen that it's really moving the price point compared to the other two. It's a nice to have. I think it's a subjective boost, but anyway, food for thought. That's been my experience so far.
Okay, well, wait a second. So are you saying that a garbage disposal, like what's the situation where when you scope that drain, it would predicate you thinking that a garbage disposal creates an
increased risk profile?
risk? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. It is entirely a engineering hypothesis I have that garbage disposals will encourage tenants to put much more aggressive shit down I use that loosely, down the
Yeah, yeah.
down the drain. And whether and if you have a line that you haven't scoped, which I did in my first couple of units, I didn't do, and I got bit badly on one of them. That you're just accelerating a problem that's going to come, right? So it's a qualitative, subjective fear, but food for thought, right? So something for folks to think about, because if you have a gap, an issue in the sewer line, I forget, Frank, what's that tar paper stuff they use to kind of bind the street line to the sewer? And it's just, if you have a problem, it's like maybe 3 years out or 5 years out, and you have a garbage disposal, that's not going to make that better. It's only going to accelerate that. That was my fear,
Okay.
right? And so that was my hypothesis.
So, but what you're saying is the more backups that are caused by those types of things that are now encouraged, the faster you are aging or depreciating or destroying that already compromised
or just
sewer drain.
realizing, right? Because I mean, like, look, if you don't have garbage disposals and they're only putting water and minor particulates down there, you may not have a problem, but they start putting down things that, like, shredded garbage disposal debris, and it catches on a root in the line, and now suddenly over time that builds up, and it's going to build. I think it's going to build up faster. That's my hypothesis. So instead of a problem having 8 years from now, maybe you have a problem 2 years from now, and so it's a hypothesis, but it's not entirely a
right
unreasonable one based on logic, right?
So even if it's not a major expense, it's like more accelerated minor expenses obviously add up as well, and that's an economic burden. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a potential concern, right? But I'm still putting him in my high-end units, to your point, right? Because I think it's part of the package expectation. They look for the washer dryer, they look for the dishwasher, they assume the garbage disposal. And if I'm like, oh yeah, it's there, it's not, there's a minor thing, I don't think it sways the decision a ton. But frankly, if you've sunk money, you're more likely to have an issue with a high-end washer dryer and a dishwasher than you are with a garbage disposal. My experience with garbage disposals is once every 4 to 7 years they're going to crap out, and you just replace it, and it's not an awful replacement. But I will say this, like, I think after going through the sewer line experience, I'd make sure that was in good shape before I put one in.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, we were the last issue we had was in the duplex in Milwaukee, and it was a rag stuck in the disposal. But like you said, Chris, I think the units in the duplex are a little bit more higher end than the stuff we're doing in St. Louis. Not that it's definitely not D class, it's definitely C class, but like you said too, Jeffrey, clean and safe. I don't know how many of the tenants in those areas would look for a disposal, but like Chris was saying, they're less likely to put something harmful, try to get that disposal to chew it up and send it down the line if there's no disposal. So that's why I was asking. Yeah. I've heard of some landlords not putting in dishwashers either. I don't know what kind of units they were talking about, but I think a dishwasher is a nice feature, whether it's C, B, or, C or B class. Jason, is that your hand?
Yes. Quick question, then I got to head out because I don't know anything about this. I've been debating. I have a fourplex. I've been debating adding a washer and dryer in the basement for everybody to use. If they do use it a lot, I'll add another set. What can I do? I'm worried about them using it so much that it's going to clog up the sewer lines. Is there anything I could do to prevent that? I don't know.
One recommendation would be to have certain days of the week that like are assigned days. The only I don't want to say drawback, but the only catch with that or caveat could potentially be, if somebody is like doing like 3 or 4 loads of laundry one day, and then the next day, whoever's turn it is, they do 3 or 4. Um, there could be workarounds in both directions. So I would say that probably should start the conversation around having some sort of structure to who is able to use the washers and dryers and when. But then kind of from there, I I'd say kind of, be flexible isn't really the word I want to use, but maybe open to any suggestions that the tenants may have. Of course, if anybody else has any as well, but that's one of the things that I have heard multiple times is adding some level of structure to what um common use property, or not property, common use
Appliances.
yeah, appliances, thank you. I was about to say assets. What common use appliances are um available for whom and when?
Is it a duplex or a quad or
It's a
how big
quad.
is it?
A
So
quad.
I have a triplex, and I'm migrating each of the units to have their own in units, but like right when we started, they shared a basement, and they had one washer and one dryer, and it kind of worked okay, but I had tenants who got along pretty well. I guess I would offer 3 points, right? Point one, unless, I mean, you should, if you haven't scoped the drain line since you bought it, like it would be good to do it as a preventive measure. I haven't had any issues with in any of our 30 units where the washer dryer caused the issue, right? It was just the pipes got old, and frankly, what screwed things up was just regular usage by toilets and sinks, right? So I don't think the washer dryer causes it. Two is, with more than 4 units or more, if you have enough room in the basement, you may almost want to think about, like, can I do 2 dryers? Can I do 2 washers? But otherwise, you can, one way to ration, you can either have the tenants agree to kind of just figure it out amongst themselves, but 4 is tough. 2 is easy. 3 is manageable. 4 is a little more work. One way to ration it, and I have not done this, but I've entertained it, is you could coin operate them to kind of like, that'll throttle their use. But the last thing I tell you is just my humble experience is that the biggest risk you have with shared washers and dryers is the reliability of the washers and dryers, right? So I inherited a unit that had a couple speed queens. Oh my God, they're awesome. Like, they're brutes. I mean, they're not energy
I already got
efficient. They
pricing
use a
for
ton
those.
of, yeah, they use a ton of water, but my God, they never break down. I use steer clear of like front loaders. Front loads.
Yep.
I would go for old school top load washers, front load dryers. Like Whirlpool, Maytag, steer clear of Samsung and LG for this application, right? And
Yeah, I have Speed Queens for my house, and I love them. And that's
they're
definitely
amazing.
I already got pricing for the coin operated
Yeah.
Speed Queen.
I have LGs and I have LGs at home, or Samsungs or whatever washer, and they're great, but I'd never put them in a rental. I mean, oh my God, like, no. And we had a unit that had a Samsung dishwasher. Yeah, and that was our conversation last week, Frank, or a couple weeks ago. And a lot of repair places won't do Samsungs and LGs because the part availability is just so cruddy, right? So, but yeah, I would say your biggest risk there is probably getting the tenants to play well together. And the biggest real risk you have as a landlord is just the reliability of the machines with 4 or 5 people, well, actually a 4 unit, are they 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms?
2 bedrooms.
So you could have arguably, right, sake of argument, right, married couples with 1 child, teenager, 3 times 4, 12. You could have 12 people trying to share these washers and dryers, including 4 teenagers. Like, oh my God, like, yeah, you got to get something that's reliability is probably your number one mission. And then from there, it's just how do you get them to all play nice together? And if you could, because you can have, running an electrical line in the basement, because the panel is probably in the basement, is not too crazy unless you're going to blow the capacity of your panel. and adding another, splitting a water line for a washer is not hard. You could potentially share the drain line, maybe, from the 2-inch to the 4-inch, like a 4-inch riser, just to kind of, you might be, but to the extent you could add a second dryer and or maybe even a second washer might, alleviate a lot of concerns to make them all play nice together. But your biggest risk is probably the reliability of the machines.
That makes sense. I will look into that a little more. I was gonna start off with one, but then see how it goes. But it might make sense, just like you said, just to start with two.
Your tenants the good news is the tenants will let you know really quickly if that's working or not, right? And that's exactly the right approach, right? Try with one and then
Yeah.
see, and then ask them for feedback. How's it working?
Sounds good. I was mostly worried about it. I don't know much about washers and dryers. I was worried about them clogging it up, but I will get I didn't get my line scope. That's the only thing I didn't do. But so far so good, but I'll get that done before I have the washers put in.
Hey, Frank, I'm about to hop out, but I wanted to give everybody a quick update from last week. So I know that I had all of the, various random things that came up with getting ready to close. So this is going to be probably the shortest and maybe the most positive, for lack of a better phrase, of all of the updates. Friday, I am set to close on the property in Detroit.
That's awesome. That's only 2 days away.
Yes. So everything is ready. I got an email from Brian today about connecting with title to get the wire instructions. So once I get that the email with the wire instructions, I'll give the title company a call to initiate the wire so that come Friday, I'll be ready to close on the property. And then got the Zuber one rental at a time book. So I'll take a couple of photos while I'm, in the process of, signing everything and have the book, and then I'll send that over to him. And either this weekend or I don't know if he's going to do a daily financial news on Labor Day on the 2nd, but or he might do it on Sunday. It depends, but I'll definitely be sending him that. So I'll make sure that everybody knows if anybody is looking out for the golden ticket, it should be within the next few days.
Is Zuber still on the cruise?
Yeah.
Holy cow, I completely forgot about that. I'm glad you had mentioned that, Sean.
Yeah, he was this morning. He was in Greenland this morning.
I remember icebergs.
Right.
Yeah.
That is right.
Yeah. That's
Chester, I
awesome.
might have the honor of getting a black card the same session you get your gold card when he comes back from the cruise.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll definitely be awesome. And you think it might be for the property that you have the report on? You thinking like this one, outside of like a few minor things?
Yeah, I'm in due diligence now. I extended it, so I've got a closing date next week. If we can come to terms.
Nice. That'll
Great.
be awesome. Yeah, that'll definitely be cool. So, yeah, that's like I said, just wanted to give everybody an update so that everything is pretty much ready to close on the first property. And then next week, this time, start looking at, for the next one. So I don't know if anybody has any questions before I hop off, but in case not,
Congratulations, Chester. That's awesome. Do
Yeah.
you have like a stabilization plan, like what you have to do to kind of get that property under control once you get it?
So it's going to be working with a local area property manager up there in Detroit. And so once like I officially closed out, then I'll get in touch with them and officially start that stabilization process.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'll probably be in touch with them. I'd say probably this time next week.
Cool. Congratulations, man.
Well, definitely appreciate it. Thanks to everybody. And unless anybody has any other questions, because I've got to be up extremely early, so I can get all of tomorrow and Friday's work done tomorrow so that I have, Friday off basically to take care of closing. Righty, everybody. Well, definitely thank you first and foremost. Thank you everybody here. And I know, a few people who had already hopped off, but definitely want to say thank you all because, definitely would not have been at this point or to be able to do all of this without you guys. So very much appreciate everybody's help and encouragement along the way. Even though Michelle isn't here, I know she was, very instrumental in this as well.
Cool.
So
Congratulations again.
Hey, Chester,
awesome. Yes.
what are you going to do to celebrate?
What am I going to do to celebrate?
Yes, you have to celebrate these accomplishments, these milestones.
You are definitely right, Cynthia. I have not thought about that.
Well,
So
think about it because this is a big one.
yes, definitely. So I will have that as homework.
That sounds good.
Okay. So, all right. So, yep. So I've got something to think about, and I will definitely report back on that next week.
Okay, well, take care.
All righty. Thank you, Cynthia. All righty. I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, goodbye.
Right.
So how are the rest of you guys doing? Frank will be right back, so I thought I'd step in for him. How are the rest of you guys doing? Good? Mikey, are you there?
Hey,
What are you doing? Are you working?
I am, yeah. I'm listening and wrenching at the same time.
Hey, there's a typhoon going over there to Japan. How's your lady doing?
I think she's okay, as far as I know.
Okay. Because I watched it on the news tonight and I was thinking about her and wanted to make sure we checked in to see how she's doing.
Oh, I appreciate that, Jen. Yeah, thanks for checking in.
Absolutely. Well, he's back.
Bye, Cynthia.
Bye. Chester left.
I'm back. One thing I was going to ask Chester or actually all of you here, when we've talked about, like Dion says, he's never wired money or anything. He always gets a cashier's check for his closings. But when we get the wiring instructions, I was under the impression that we would call the title company and verify account number and routing numbers and everything like that and have them read the numbers to me. But the last time we did it, the person at the title company told me I needed to read the numbers to her to verify.
Frank, what happened for us last time is they sent us a sheet that had like basically half the information of the wiring instructions, and then we were instructed to call them, and then we would read our half, and then they would give us the other half, and then that would be anyway. So
okay,
to kind of it's like a dual-sided verification, right?
Yeah, that makes
a good idea.
sense.
One thing that I noticed that was different on this property that I was showing earlier is when I sent the earnest money, is there was an option to do it the old way, or there was like this new secure portal where they guaranteed it, which I thought was a good idea.
Oh. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, the fact that you could be wiring like big money to the wrong account or some fraud involved is really terrifying to me.
Yeah, I know they always warn you about the wire fraud and all these things that are going on today, but that secure portal is definitely a plus. Did you have experience with that, Kevin? Were you going to say something about that?
No, I was just gonna say it's like a standoff. Who's gonna say the numbers first?
Yeah, yeah, that was right. It made sense to me to have them read the numbers to me, but it was backwards. I like that what Chris did too. Half and half sounds pretty good. We'll have to see what happens this time.
Yeah, I've heard of situations where you get like 2 set of wire instructions, and obviously one of them is like a fraud trying to get to you. But if you didn't know, like that was your first purchase or whatever it is, then that's why you have to call and verify those things.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Did you get all your questions answered, Sean, on the inspection?
Yeah, it's very helpful. I would say that, just being able to talk through it with other investors and hearing different perspectives, people like you that have construction experience and let's see, who was it that was the engineer?
Chris, yeah.
Chris, yeah. Yeah, it kind of gives you a little more, confidence about like, okay, what do I need to do now? And what do I need to do, put on my to-do list, but it's not necessarily like I got to take care of it immediately and stuff like that. It's very helpful than just trying to go it alone, to have a group that you can kind of bounce things off of and get an idea of your plan.
I look, as an engineer and guy who's probably ADHD, like the challenge I run into is, look, I really embraced Matt's perspective on like creating the good experience for the tenant, but it's easy to go overboard on that, right? And what I've so I started out with a list of, I got 10 things to do, and next thing you know, I got 50 things to do, and so I've started to kind of, and now I've actually kind of hired a part-time maintenance guy, and we created a Google Sheets, and we created a maintenance log. And what we've had to do is triage them into like 3 tiers. Like class A is, you got to do it as soon as possible. It's going to cause immediate, risk to the building or the tenants, and you got to solve it. B is like, do it soon because it's causing damage. It's not a today, tomorrow thing, but like, as soon as we can squeeze it in. C is like, yeah, we'd like to do this. It's good to do. It's probably good practice, but like, it's not really going to cause us any major issues in the long term. And then D are like enhancements, right? And that's, I'm not saying that's a perfect structure, but like we've had to kind of, because I'll walk a unit and I'll be like, I'd really like to do that. I like to do that, but like we've got to prioritize it against the capacity of a limited maintenance workforce and our capital reserves, right? So as and the problem is, and this is where Matt is so good, is after look, I have the benefit of having, like, my wife and I would buy houses and renovate them and live in them and then sell them or rent them and then move on. And it's like, and engineering helps a little bit in kind of some of the electrical stuff. So, but like, Matt knows when you can look at a problem and say, what's the impact? What's the cost to remediate? Like, that's just gold, right? Because that's what helps you put it into perspective to say, how important is it? What's the risk to me? And what's the thing where I struggled, and I think that probably my biggest weakness in my rent box or my buy box right now is the cost to fix, the cost to make ready. I'm better, but I'm still way off, right? That's my biggest risk, or risk factor in my buy boxes right now, is I still don't have the make ready costs kind of dialed in as well as I need to, right? So
yeah, I would completely agree that, yeah, for me, if I look at something you know, it may cost $50,000 or $100,000 to get it where it needs to be. And I don't, you know, I don't necessarily know. I kind of got an idea of, you know, it's a big deal or it's not, but you know, how much it costs to fix.
Yeah.
Some things can be really expensive.
Yeah. If it's 5 or 8,000, like, okay, fine. But if it's like 50 or 80, that's a big swing.
Yeah, that'll
right?
mess your
You know?
numbers up quick.
Yeah.
And I have heard stories on YouTube about people that bought something at a good price and then they realized they got in and started, you know, fixing it and you know, like $100,000 later, they said, you know, this wasn't really a good. The price was low, but when you add in the make ready costs, it's not a good deal anymore.
Yeah. I was telling Frank when the call started, like we bought, and I think it's less of an issue when you're buying like turnkey or like, you know, lipstick on a pig, kind of like, you know, minor modifications. But when you buy, you know, I think the natural evolution of every investor is you realize that the greater returns come from where you're going to put in greater effort, greater renovations. But then you need like Frank's level of skill to understand like what is greater renovations really going to mean and what does it cost and what's the risk.
Right.
And like we bought a building and we thought it was an amazing deal. We were gonna convert a 2-unit mixed use, meaning one commercial and one apartment, into a 3-use residential, and we thought we were, you know, gonna crush it. And then we realized the township, when you went from a 2 to a 3-unit on anything, you had to have sprinklers in, and suddenly that was like a
Ooh.
80 that was like a 60 to 80
Ooh.
grand. That was it was a 40 grand for the sprinklers, which is 20 grand better than we thought. But then the water company said, oh, wait a minute, our water main is not in the middle of the street, it's on the other side of the street. So now you got to cut it into the, you know, the main highway, and that's an extra 25 grand. And so suddenly now you're looking at an extra, you know, now you're trending towards 80 to 100
Yeah, you
grand
got a down
extra.
payment on another property.
And you're like, oh crap. And so eventually we actually we dialed back our plans and said, okay, we're gonna do 2 larger 2 units instead of 3 units. The economics are not as good, but they're close enough, it's fine. But yeah, so you know, it's an expensive learning lesson and learning curve.
And a lot of times, getting back to the inspection reports, the ones we've gotten here will have like a health and safety section. And those are usually the ones that I check out first because those are the things you need to do fairly soon.
Yeah.
And the ones that we get from St. Louis, they're color coded, right? So it's I think blue is normal, yellow might need to be worked on, and red is definitely needs to be worked on. So
yeah,
the more red dots.
I've had home inspectors both sides of the coin, like those that just inspect and don't repair, and then others that are like, oh, we inspect, but then like we'll also give you like, oh, it's $1,000 and we can do the work. Like, have you seen a direction towards either way? I mean, I actually would like folks who would do the repairs, but I'm actually finding a lot of inspectors don't do that nowadays.
Yeah, and back in the day, it used to be a conflict of interest because they could set the price wherever they wanted for the work that they were, or people might think they were adding things to the inspection report that maybe didn't actually need to be done. So, and I think it happened more with termite reports versus home inspection reports, but that was an issue here in California for us for a long time. So I don't think there are many companies that do offer to do the repairs anymore here. But the one in St. Louis, they do. They'll give us the report and they'll give us an estimate, just like you said, on what it would cost to get those things fixed if we had them do it.
That's awesome. I mean, it may not be most cost effective, but to be able to get that level of certainty, like at least you know, okay, I can get it fixed for this. Whether or not it's the most cost effective or not is one thing, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think for running numbers, right, their numbers probably would be considered, I don't think conservative is the right word, but it would be kind of a little bit overboard. So if you use their number, you can probably get it done for less, that kind of thing. But at least you have a ballpark.
You have your upper limit, right? you know the worst case scenario, right? Which is awesome.
Yeah. Did anybody else have any questions or anything?
I might actually make it to the end of one. I thought I was going to make it before, and then I hung up and went back and kind of like watched it on YouTube, and I'm like, oh, they kept talking after I left.
Yeah, that happens quite often. We were, I think last week, you weren't with us last week, right? But towards the end,
Right.
we spent the last few minutes way off track. Mikey and Mark were talking about spam and
Yeah, I think I was actually working on this deal last week.
oh, okay. Yeah. So
You know, Frank, it would be interesting one week, not today, but to talk about like people who are self-managing, what tools they use versus property managers, and how are they evaluating. And I'd love to see some comparison between like, you know, what are people seeing around property management cost, like all in, and you know, what are people who are self-managing using? Because like, you know, Dion and Zuber are pretty high on Hemlane. I've met Dana, the CEO of Hemlane. I think it's a good product if you're, you know, if you're sub 30 units, if you're that level of small investor. You know, Matt's pretty down on it. I think it depends on what you're looking for. But I'd love to hear what other people are seeing and thinking at some point. Maybe
yeah, sure.
If we get a slow mo on one of these calls, it'd be an interesting topic to tee up.
Yep, of course, we can certainly bring that up. I'll make notes too, but do you have my number, Chris? I mean, I was going to say you could text me just to make sure you're going to be on the call because
I do not, but I'd love to get that if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I'll put my email in the chat if you want to drop me a note. That would be awesome.
Okay, yeah,
if that works for you.
Perfect.
Chris, where do you invest?
I after much deliberation and searching nationally, I got a little gun shy on the whole remote investing thing. I'm not as brave as Frank, clearly, or as smart, but so I invest within an hour limit of me. So I drove from southern New York I drove the east half of Pennsylvania, all of Jersey and northern Maryland, and I settled on Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which U.S. News and World Report for 5 of the last 8 years has said is one of the top 5 places to retire, which I don't personally believe, considering I've seen Scottsdale, and why the hell would you not go to Scottsdale? But and then the Philly suburbs, I won't do Philly, but some of the suburbs like Collegeville, King of Prussia, Trapp are just, you know, nice. A lot of the big farmers have built R&D hubs here, so is Dow Chemical, and it's just a good, diverse, interesting area. So not cheap taxes though, but you know, that's a separate issue. But yeah, those are my 2 markets, both within an hour of my place. I started in Lancaster. We got about a dozen units there, and then we moved to Trapp, and then now we're about a dozen or so, 15 each. And I'm gonna double down on spend a little more time in Collegeville Trapp, and then yeah, maybe at that point once I get stabilized next year, because we did pick up a couple commercial units that are causing me some major headaches. I may actually entertain remote investing, but that's probably a year and a half out.
How far are your 2 markets, you said?
Everything was within literally a 61-minute driving distance. I got one that's
nice.
25 and one that's 60. And I'm self-managing all of 30 units, 25 of 30 units. I inherited one building and I just kept the property manager, and I'm not thrilled with them, but I just don't have the cycles right now. Because as we grew, every building we bought, every next project we got was more in depth. Like we bought turnkeys, and then it was like almost turnkeys, and it was lipstick and a pig. And then now, like literally like a month or 2 ago, I had everything. I had 4 buildings in like major construction renovation. So like and I absolutely got way ahead of my skis. I got too much going on. So like we're gonna take the rest of this year and get everything stabilized. We have finished the construction, get it leased out, and then we'll reevaluate. But so yeah, all good.
So no more AOL email, Frank?
Well, I teased Mark that I created a REI Gmail just for him.
Nice.
We started this one because I don't know if you guys have seen the t-shirt that we're trying to do with Zuber.
No.
But well, if you go to our channel, so we designed a t-shirt for the ORAT community, and we're taking orders now. I might be able to show you guys real quick.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I have to take down my background.
Because Frank, the only one of my 30 tenants who has an AOL email address is 72. So I'm just, come on, like I'm just saying.
The financial firefighter was teasing Frank about old guy with a AOL email.
Yeah. He said you might as well just send it old snail mail. It'll get there faster.
Yeah. Would you want it? Do you want to fax it, Frank? I'll give you my fax number if you want.
Hold on one second.
He's going to get his fax machine warmed up. It's all good.
So Chris, you're still in growth mode with 30?
Yeah, well, I think I got ahead of my skis, so I it's going to take me the next 6 months to kind of like stabilize what I got, and then probably.
I try to do one at a time, and it takes me 6 months to stabilize one.
Yeah, and what I found is as you buy more aggressive deals, like I think what I've learned is like triage is 6 months, like it's so it doesn't explode and you're not miserable. Stabilization's I think actually to really understand the unit and like understand the tenants and the market and the nuances of that building and the maintenance risks, and I actually think that's like a year, right? I think triage is like 3 to 6 months. Like I understand enough where it's not going to explode. I'm not going to yeah. So and then when you do new construction, like we did new construction, we had a great contractor.